What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of WNBA Today on CLNS, previewing the upcoming WNBA Finals between the Las Vegas Aces and the Phoenix Mercury. This has been an incredible WNBA playoffs. We're getting 3-game series, which the first round is at best of 3, going to 3 games. We're getting 5-game series is going to 5 games. And I want to see this WNBA Finals series go to 7 games. That's my prediction. I'm going to break down my prediction in this video and discuss why I think the team that I think will win. And I'm not going to say who that is just yet, but I do think this is going to go 7. If you look at the Aces, their first round went to 3 games all the way down to the wire. Their second round went to 5 games all the way down to overtime. And this is a team that has been figuring out ways to win in the clutch. They've been figuring out how to pull wins off where it feels like maybe they haven't played their best. And I think they're going to do more of that in this upcoming series. So shout out to the Aces for beating the Indiana Fever in overtime. Yes, the Fever were extremely shorthanded, especially down the stretch without both Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, not to mention Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, Ari McDonald, and the list goes on. But this Fever team was relentless. I give them all the credit in the world. I talked about that in my last video, which you can check out on this channel. But the Aces ultimately pulled it off largely thanks to the performances of A'ja Wilson, who has just been massive throughout these playoffs, 35 points in this closeout game. Jackie Young, who had 32 in this game, and Jackie Young is quietly having the best postseason of her WNBA career, just a complete departure from her struggles last playoffs. And then, of course, Chelsea Gray, 2022 Finals MVP, who had 8 points in overtime, finished with 17 points on the night, and just seemingly just is at the right place at the right time and makes big plays when the Aces needed most. So that's their big 3. That's their core that has already won 2 titles together. But I was impressed with other Aces players throughout the series. Alyssa Smith was huge in games 2 and 3. I think she had 18 points and 16 points in those games, and really made it difficult to put too much energy on A'ja Wilson because she was proving to be an offensive threat as well. Obviously, Jewell Loyd was a big offseason acquisition, and she hasn't panned out to be the scorer that she was a couple years back. She struggled a little bit on that end, but a move to the bench was a big part of why they went on that 17-game win streak. And Jewell Loyd hit a huge 3 in overtime yesterday and also grabbed some very timely offensive rebounds. So the Aces, to me right now, they're not the perfect team. Sometimes I think they play with their food a little bit. Defensively, they have lapses that are a little bit baffling because they at times look elite on that end, and obviously they have A'ja Wilson anchoring them there, and she's had some spectacular moments. She had 4 blocks and 4 steals in game 5. But they're a little bit perplexing because sometimes they're just not as dominant as you expect them to be. And one thing is the Fever, this Indiana Fever team has kind of done the unthinkable. So on one hand, it's like the fact that they pushed the Aces to game 5 overtime is maybe more of a tell of how relentless they've been on their end. But you look at the Seattle Storm, a team that honestly didn't impress me much this season, that I felt like punched below their weight. And the Seattle Storm were one Erica Wheeler jump shot away from eliminating the Aces in the first round. So as much as I love, I love things about this Aces team, and Becky Hammond says post-game, I think this is a really special group. And I do think that this is a really special group because when they were 14-14, they could have folded and they could have started turning on each other and having locker room issues. And that's not what happened. They stuck together. They made note of it. A'ja Wilson, on her own accord, brought that up post-game that she, after that 53-point blowout right before the winning began. And she's like, we all are, together here. And you can see that on the floor. You can see that on the way that they all connect. That being said, I'm not 100% sold on their ability to beat the Phoenix Mercury. And that's why I'm picking the Phoenix Mercury to win the WNBA Finals in 7 games. Despite the fact that the Aces have the better record this season, they are the number 2 seed. The Mercury were the number 4 seed. The Vegas, the betting odds all have the Aces with an advantage. The Aces have home court advantage. The Aces have the best player in the series in A'ja Wilson, though Alyssa Thomas does not lag very far behind. And 3 out of 4 times when these teams faced off this year, the Aces won. And they were mostly close games. The Aces won in June and in August by 3 points in June and by 3 points in August. The Mercury won earlier in June by 6 points. That was their sole win in the 4-game season series. And then later in August, the Aces absolutely blew out the Mercury on August 21st. So they won 3 of 4 games, and they won one of them in very decisive fashion. So you look at the betting odds, you look at the fact that one team had a better record, you look at the fact that in their head-to-head matchups, the Aces have been the better team. And you might think, okay, the Aces are going to win this series. And I actually don't think they're going to win the series, but again, I am picking them in 7. So when you're picking any prediction in 7 games means that anything can happen, obviously. But the way that the Phoenix Mercury have maneuvered through these playoffs, to me, they feel like a team that is going to win it all, and the Aces don't. And that's kind of like dumb basketball analysis to just say, I've been watching the playoffs and one team just feels like they're going to win it all and one team doesn't. But sometimes that's the best you can give. And truthfully, when the Phoenix Mercury's path included beating both of the teams from last year's NBA Finals, WNBA Finals, and they kind of destroy the New York Liberty in that game 2, tie up a series. And for those of you that didn't watch that series, in game 1, in the first round of the playoffs at Barclays Center, Alyssa Thomas has the opportunity to take a 1-0 lead, misses a layup, and wasn't rattled after the game at the podium at all, like whatsoever. They come back in game 2 with their backs against the wall, potentially, facing elimination on the road in front of a very, kind of rowdy Barclays Center crowd, and they blow out the Liberty, and they have the largest margin of victory ever for a team that was facing elimination in the WNBA playoffs. And then what do? They bring the series back home, and I thought that they were the team that wanted it more. It wasn't an inspiring Liberty effort. Obviously, the Liberty fire Sandy Brandello shortly after, or they don't renew her contract, I should say. But that series made me a Phoenix Mercury believer. And even still, I picked the Minnesota Lynx to win the next round because it was so hard to bet against Minnesota, considering the dominant season that they had. But you could feel that something special was happening with Phoenix. And they head into the next round, the semifinals. They drop game 1. And then in game 2, they're down by 20. And this was, to me, the turning point of the entire WNBA Finals, and maybe more than that, because I'll put a pin in that. I'll talk about that in a moment. But this was a transformative thing that happened. That Sammy Whitcomb hits that 3 at the end of regulation. The game goes to overtime. The Mercury win. And then they go off and win the next 2 games. They beat the Lynx in 4. And now they're going to the WNBA Finals. They're more well-rested. And I think they have learned how to win together throughout these playoffs in a more convincing fashion. And so the thing that worries me for Phoenix is that Alyssa Thomas and her physicality is something that she's been able to really impose throughout these playoffs, that I do think A'ja Wilson is going to be able to hold her own better on that end than anybody else that she's faced so far. But this run has been convincing. It's been decisive. They've played the best of the best. And yes, Nafisa Collier was not available for that final game. But up until then, they were outplaying, they outplayed the Lynx in those 2 games in between game 1 and game 4. And you're seeing all the pieces come together. You're seeing Alyssa Thomas playing just at an elite MVP form, and she's been in MVP form for a while now, but this is the best basketball that I think she's ever played. Satou Sabally, who got a lot of flack earlier on because she had some bad shooting performances, she's found her offensive groove. Kahleah Copper, who missed some time this season, recovering from knee surgery, suddenly she's the same player that helped lead the Sky to a championship. And so the pieces are coming together. Sammy Whitcomb's off the bench, showing her impact. I think Natasha Mack is somebody that we probably haven't discussed on this channel, but she comes in and does the little things for this team. For a team to win a championship, everybody needs to be a star in their role. I've said that many times. And right now, the Mercury have a bunch of players that are starring in their role, despite only having 2 players carrying over from last year's roster. It's pretty remarkable. This is pretty much a team that was assembled in the offseason, like an expansion team. That's how new all these faces are. And they've managed to buy in, and what Nate Dibbitz has kind of projected for this group to adhere to, like they've all subscribed to his coaching philosophy. You can tell that it's a bought-in group. And I'm sold on them. And I'm sold on this big 3 of Alyssa Thomas, Kahleah Copper, and Satou Sabally. They outplayed so far every big 3 that they face. That includes Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, and Brianna Stewart. That includes Nafisa Collier, Courtney Williams, and Kayla McBride. They have been the best big 3 in these playoffs. And I don't see why that's going to end. I don't think that there's anything that the Aces can do that is going to necessarily shut that group down. players like Satou Sabally, I always find that it's more about her than the defense. Like if she has a bad game, it's less that she was forced into terrible looks or anything like that. And it's more that she perhaps just missed good ones or she had bad shot selection. So I feel like she's one of those players where her fate is a little bit more in her hands than most. The Aces' biggest advantage in this series is A'ja Wilson. A'ja Wilson was not there for the lone Mercury win in the 4 games that the two teams faced off, but in the 3 other games, she was the best player on the floor and averaged 25 points per game. And she has struggled against Aaliyah Boston more than anybody else that she's faced in a while. And even still, if you look at the numbers she dropped in this semifinals, like they were ridiculous. And so I don't know that there's a way to stop A'ja Wilson. Obviously, you want to annoy her, you want to force her into more difficult looks. Aaliyah Boston's physicality did get under her skin earlier in the series. The fact that she wasn't able to catch the ball right by the basket as she usually prefers to. Like I think that there were little things that Aaliyah Boston did well at times. And if you look at the matchup numbers, Aaliyah Boston did force A'ja Wilson into some difficult shots, into a couple of bad shooting performances as well. I don't know that the Mercury are going to be able to hamper her too much. And if you look at their records and, over time, A'ja Wilson has outplayed Alyssa Thomas for the most part throughout their career. She has a 17-9 edge overall, 6-3 in the playoffs. A lot of that has to do with the talent around them. But that's the big question to me. I am leaning Mercury, but they are going to have to figure out A'ja Wilson in some capacity. So this is going to be a physical series. This is going to be a series that is centered around both teams' big threes. This is going to be a series that is centered around Alyssa Thomas and A'ja Wilson, 2 perennial MVP candidates. I know Napheesa Collier was in that conversation. She was my runner-up this year, but Alyssa Thomas very well was a very legitimate vote for the season as well. So my prediction is that the Phoenix Mercury are going to win a close game in Game 7, but when that's your prediction, it really is a toss-up and it's anybody's game. One thing I do know is that both of these teams are going to fight. These are both teams that have shown enormous resilience this season, whether it's the Aces coming back from being a 500 team on the verge of missing the playoffs altogether to winning 17 straight, the way that they've responded to even when they've played poorly against some teams, they've always come back and they've found ways to win. And you can knock them for even being in the position of being in overtime against the Fever yesterday, but ultimately they were playing a bunch of killers. Like I give all the credit in the world to Odyssey Sims and Natasha Howard and Shea Petty and the other Fever standouts from the series. And they went off in that overtime period. And the same thing I can say about the Seattle Storm win in Game 3. While it wasn't the most convincing thing to see them almost lose that series, because I don't think that Seattle Storm team had any business being in that spot, they ultimately do win. So they find ways to win games. Same thing can be said for the Phoenix Mercury, the way that they've bounced back, maybe had multiple injuries this season. They never really had the chance to fully mesh together. Both of these teams are great teams. Both of them are deserving to be here in the WNBA Finals. I'm looking forward to watching a great series. We'll be watching the series closely. We'll have reaction videos on this channel. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to win the series and in how many games, and who your X Factors are. My X Factors, honestly, are probably Satou Sabally, who I think is just a perennial X factor for this team. And then for the Aces, it might be Jackie Young, because Jackie Young is averaging north of 20 points per game on 54% shooting so far in these playoffs. And it's just a far improvement from last year. And if they can keep getting that Jackie Young, the Mercury might be in trouble. So lots of talent across both of these teams, 2 incredible big threes, 2 good coaches. We'll see how it all pans out. But we'll have more coverage for you throughout these coming weeks on WNBA Today on CLNS. So thanks for watching and continue to tune in.